March 7th, 2025 was one of the bloodiest days in the history of the CDCR. Today's episode is going to be heading to Kern Valley State Prison, where on March 7th, 2025 at 5:47 p.m., incarcerated persons Gilbert Garcia and Rodolfo Cortez allegedly attacked another incarcerated person, German Merino, in the day room. Staff would immediately respond, stopping the attack. Officers would initiate life-saving measures and activated 911. Marino was then taken to the prison's triage and treatment area, where emergency medical personnel continued administering life-saving measures. A paramedic would pronounce Marino dead at 6:22 p.m. So far in 2025, the CDCR has experienced 7 homicides.
It is 5:03, and we begin this morning with your 17 Crime Watch. The California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation is conducting a homicide investigation this morning after an inmate was stabbed to death at Kern Valley State Prison. Officers say 2 men attacked 37-year-old German Merino Friday evening. Marino later died from his wounds. Officers say they found an improvised weapon from the scene. No other injuries were reported. The 2 alleged attackers were placed in restricted high-security housing. The CDCR placed 10 prisons in a modified program in response to a surge in violence against staff and inmates. The California Correctional Institute in Tehachapi and Kern Valley State Prison in Delano are on that list. Meals are delivered directly to housing units, showers are controlled, and phone calls and visits are currently restricted.
A tough new law goes into effect this week in the nation's gang capital, Los Angeles. Identified members of the notorious 18th Street Gang will not be allowed to appear together in public, even to stand together in their own front yards. The city is targeting the 18th Street Gang because it is one of the nation's largest and fastest growing gangs. The federal government has also been cracking down, deporting gang members convicted of crimes. But as ABC's Anderson Cooper reports, the deportations are only exporting the problem.
Far from the streets of Los Angeles, in a squalid San Salvador slum, the 18th Street Gang has found another member. His name is Little Mousy. He's only 9 years old, but today he's getting his first tattoo. Welcome to the new El Salvador. The Civil War is long over, but the gang war has just begun. San Salvador today seems a lot like Los Angeles. You cruise through streets of fast food, fancy cars, and radios blasting the oldies. Everywhere you look, American culture stares back. But by deporting what Salvadoran officials say are at least 3,000 gang members to the country of their birth, the U.S. has also been exporting a darker side of its culture. The deportees, most of whom grew up in Los Angeles, return to a country they barely know. The gang life they learned in the U.S. is the one thing that gives them some status.
Because you've been to L.A., people look up to you, they give you respect?
Yeah, because, you know what's up, you've been through a lot of stuff, sometimes they haven't been through, and so they look up to you.
Sloppy was 12 when he joined L.A.'s 18th Street Gang. Upon returning to El Salvador, he formed a new gang clique with Nasty, a deported drug dealer. Together, they've recruited a half-dozen young Salvadorans eager to join something hardcore, something American. The gang has become a family of sorts, one they can't imagine living without. In the slums, there's always someone eager to belong. Carlos is only 14, but he's about to be initiated into Mara Salvatrucha, 18th Street's biggest rival gang. The initiation is called a jump-in. It's a beating by the gang that's meant to test Carlos's toughness. As night falls, the gang gathers. Soon, the beating begins. Afterwards, Carlos is stunned but happy. He passed the test. His reward is a few tokes on a joint and some cheap liquor. He now belongs, and his life will never be the same. In El Salvador, it's believed there are now some 20,000 young Salvadorans who have become gang members. You see them swaggering through slums, dressed in Nikes and baseball hats, robbing, selling drugs, stealing cars. Most wind up dead or in jail. Some become drug addicts and end up begging in the streets. With 60% of people here living in poverty and opportunities few, the police and juvenile courts can't seem to handle the problem. The gangs just keep on growing. Some kids do get out. Rosa was shot and paralyzed by a rival gang member. Her gang then abandoned her. The deportees, she says, bring nothing but disgrace. They come here, she says, and recruit and tell us the rules from LA, but in the end, we're the ones who suffer. But for every one who leaves a gang, there are 2 or 3 to take their place. A whole generation in El Salvador has come of age enamored with those deported from the U.S., enamored with this violent side of American culture. Anderson Cooper, ABC News, San Salvador.
Face to face. As Chris Blatchford shows us in this Fox Undercover report, it was all caught on tape.
It's a Sunday afternoon car show, and young people have come by the thousands to look at flashy automobiles and at each other. But when 2 rival gangs come into each other's sight, just looking isn't enough. They taunt each other, flashing signs and yelling gang names. One bystander remembers it this way.
Looking like they were trying to get crazy, but I mean, it almost looked like it was going to stop.
And as they inch closer together, a hothead crosses the imaginary line between them.
It's just like crazy. It's just madness all at once.
A knife blade flashes, and as one gangster in the distance goes to the ground, rivals descend on him like a pack of wolves. Another gang member grabs a car trophy and launches it toward the action as his homeboy gets stomped into unconsciousness. The youth with the knife then sneaks up and shoves it into the fallen gang member's back. No one comes to his rescue.
They just kind of ran off. They did run. They just kind of left their homie hanging.
Finally, it is a young woman that comes to his aid, stepping into the middle of the chaos. Police then arrive seconds later.
Yeah, you could see tension.
40-year-old Johnny Lacone is familiar with the scene. He spent a lifetime in gangs, in and out of prison for years before, he says, I opened my eyes. This, he says, is no way for a kid to live.
You see them just messing up their life, and you have compassion for them because you know what it is to be there, but you feel like, God, they don't even know this guy. It's not even something personal.
His own 20-year-old son was murdered in gang violence not long ago. He sees this video and says no one has the right to do this.
And that's a human being. That's a human being. And you think about that, and that just hurts you.
Lacone says gangs steal feelings away from kids, manipulate them, distort values, and make them someone they are not. And it is all no good.
Gangs hurt, they kill, they destroy families.
Carlos Fierro spent his youth in gangs and jail.
I've been involved in that many times.
And what he sees here saddens him too.
Show them that there's something else out there, a better life.
A gang bullet is still lodged in his spine, his hand left partially paralyzed. And he sees the gang's hatred and violence differently now.
It's a waste, man. Wasting your time, man.
Police are still looking to identify and arrest this youth in connection with the car show stabbing and any of those involved in the beating. Investigators are also seeking the identity of the victim, who left a phony name and unbelievably bolted from the hospital the same day he was attacked. Lacone says it is all part of the macho gang lifestyle that in the end leaves so many of our youth with nothing but death or prison bars.
And some of them get life, 16 years old, life. One bad decision, they've never lived. They're gonna spend the concrete and bars behind their life.
Chris Blatchford, Fox 11 News.
And Chris tells us that those 2 former gang members say parents hold the key to ending gangs by showing kids the way to get involved with other activities.
What's going on, you guys? Welcome back. Another episode of Green Lit Gang TV. Much love, much appreciation. Thank you guys so much for checking out the channel today. We're going to be sticking with the theme out of CDCR, the murders that have been taking place. Like I said in the intro, so far there have been 7 committed in 2025. And on March 7th, 2025, 3 all on the same day were committed across the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. Just a couple days ago, spokesman or spokeswoman, I should say, for the CDCR basically came out and said, hey, we're restricting movement, we're restricting phone calls, we're restricting visits. And there were about 10 or 11 high security prisons that were named in that statement. Now, Kern Valley State Prison is the site of our story, and Kern Valley State Prison is one of those prisons that is currently on major restrictive access all the way across the board. The main character in this entire story is a guy by the name of German Merino. He was in his late 30s when he was killed. We're going to read the story about how he got murdered, what happened, the facts that we have so far surrounding that case. It only happened about 6 days ago. There's not a ton of information, but there's enough. But then I was able to find an appeal that Marino filed back in January of 2014. And man, the details of his murder case and ultimate conviction are crazy and interesting, and just, you guys are going to enjoy it. You guys are very much going to enjoy it. So thank you again for checking it out really quick. If you like what you are watching, if you like what you're listening to, it just takes 2 seconds. Just hit a like, maybe leave a comment, and please subscribe. It goes a long way. Really, really does. Okay, let's jump right into it. So this is from an article that was just released a few days ago. California Department of Corrections Rehabilitation officials are investigating the March 7th, 2025 death of an incarcerated person at Kern Valley State Prison as a homicide. At 5:47 p.m., incarcerated persons Gilbert Garcia and Rodolfo Cortez allegedly attacked another incarcerated person, German Merino, in the day room. Staff immediately responded, stopping the attack. Officers initiated life-saving measures and activated 911. Marino was taken to the prison's triage and treatment area where emergency medical personnel continued administering life-saving measures. A paramedic would then pronounce him dead not even 45 minutes later. From there, the investigation ensued. They're kind of, checking out the surrounding area. Where did he die? They're going to start talking to anybody that might be willing to talk. Officers recovered one improvised weapon at the scene. No other injuries were reported. The facility has been placed on a 24-hour threat assessment to facilitate the investigation. Garcia and Cortez have been placed in restricted housing pending an investigation by the Investigative Services Unit and the Kern County District Attorney's Office. The Office of the Inspector General has been notified, and the Kern County Coroner will determine Marino's official cause of death. Now, Marino, he was an SDK Sureno, or a Surenos Do Kill member. He was also an MS-13 member. So SDK initially, back 20 years ago or so, was just a graffiti, a tag group. They were a gang. They were part of the Sureno Gang. But nothing really started kicking off until around the early to mid-2000s, in particular 2007, when MS-13, which had a presence in California, basically made SDK a subset, a gang that they now had control over. Those people that were part of SDK became MS-13 gang members. So MS-13 around this time really gets a lot of national media attention. I remember this growing up. I was in high school at this time, and the federal government and state government really start clamping down on these guys. An injunction gets placed on these guys, and what they are trying to do is stay within power. They're trying to gain numbers. They're trying to gain notoriety. They're committing heinous murders, heinous acts that are making national news. And SDK becomes an MS-13 subset group. And German Merino goes from just being a local tagger, getting in a little bit of trouble here and there, to he's a full-fledged MS-13 gang member, Sureno Gang member, and he's all the way in. And as we'll read in his appeal about the details and the facts of his case, there was no in-between for German Merino. So, Marino, 37 at the time of his death, was most recently received from Los Angeles County on May 2nd, 2012 for first-degree murder and was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Garcia, that's Gilbert Garcia, 43, was received from Los Angeles County on February 19th, 2024 for one count of assault with a deadly weapon and is serving an 11-year sentence. Cortez, 33, was received from Los Angeles County on December 19th, 2012 for 2 counts of second-degree robbery, 1 count of carjacking, and 1 count of assault with a deadly weapon on a peace officer. He is serving a 24-year sentence. Kern Valley State Prison is a Level 4 facility consisting of 4 semi-autonomous 180 design facilities and 2 standalone restricted housing units, all surrounded by a lethal electrified perimeter fence. There's also a Level 1 minimum support facility. It is on 600 acres. Kern Valley State Prison received Level 1s in June of 2005 and Level 4s in July of 2005. Background. Oh, that's kind of what we talked about with the background of the SDK, kind of like we talked about. It was simply a tagger group of Surenos until in 2007 when MS-13 was really cracked down on, an injunction was placed, and they recruited and basically brought SDK and its members into their own fold. And again, the stakes just jump. The stakes just jump. Now, really quick, what I see with Gilbert Garcia, he comes into Kern Valley State Prison on February 19th of 2024, and then within a little over a year, commits this Marino homicide. Cortez had been there for quite a while. Him and actually Marino had both been there since 2012. So about 13 years, both of these guys had been in Kern Valley State Prison. Garcia gets there February beginning, let's just say, of 2024. These guys have serious charges. Cortez, 2 counts of second-degree robbery, 1 count of carjacking, 1 count of assault with a deadly weapon. Garcia's one count of assault with a deadly weapon, 11 year. Garcia's 11-year sentence. Technically, his is the smallest. Cortez is 24 years, and Marino's doing life without. So they're going to be there with each other for a long time. His life was taken. This is what happens. Now, obviously, Marino is a Sureno gang member. These other guys are going to be Sureno gang members or other cliques that are cool because they're not going to house rivals with each other. Now, doesn't mean that things don't happen or that guards don't let things pop off, but overall, these are going to be the same kind of groups of people, and that's what we're seeing with these attacks and these murders. These are all people that are housed together. These aren't screw-ups. These aren't mess-ups where rivals got a hold of each other. No, these are other gangs cleaning house with their own, or, people on SNY yards or protective custody yards, and something pops off. And in this case, it seems like Sureno group, MS-13, was definitely cleaning house in their own right. Now, I was like, man, I got to get a background on Armand Marino. So, started doing some research. Found an appeal that was basically looked at in a court process on January 15th, 2014. Now, this is a long factual and procedural summary, but I'm telling you guys, you're going to want to hear it. So, on April 3rd, 2009, Eddie Munoz, his girlfriend Elizabeth, and his brother Carlos Valencia attended a party near 75th and Figueroa in Los Angeles. Munoz drove there in his red Ford Mustang with chrome rims. Munoz and his brother Valencia saw Armand Marino Jr., known to them as Menace, at the party. Marino was bald and had SDK gang tattoos. SDK stands for Surenos Do Kill. Marino asked Munoz whether he was still down for the hood. Valencia did not know Munoz to be an SDK member, but had seen him spend time with Marino and other SDK members 2 or 3 times a week before Munoz and Valencia moved out of their apartment complex about 18 months earlier. Valencia understood Marino was asking Munoz whether he was still rolling. Basically, are you still down? Are you still with us? Are you still going to put in work? Or what's going on? We're not seeing you. You're acting different. You're acting funny. You're acting like you don't know us. What's up? Munoz says he's not, explaining, hey, man, I got a little girl and I got a family. Marino didn't even hesitate. He tells Munoz the only way out of the gang was a bullet to the head. Munoz looked to Valencia, and he was shocked and scared in response to Marino's statement. Marino would disappear for a few minutes, but when he returned, Marino started, quote, mad-dogging Munoz's group, pacing and giving them a, quote, bad face. Marino gestured to his friends, using his thumb and fingers to simulate a handgun. He told Munoz he had a .45 in his trunk, and the only way to get out of the gang was a bullet to the head. But then he flipped. He goes, then Marino told Munoz, hey, because you're my homie, we're just going to jump you out. At about 11:30 p.m., Marino stopped Munoz, Valencia, and Elizabeth when they tried to leave the party. Marino asked Munoz, where you going, man? When Munoz said he was going home, Marino told him to stay or to promise to come back. Munoz looked at Marino dead in his eyes, and he gave the word that he would return. Once they got home, Valencia got out of the Mustang, while Munoz and Elizabeth, his girlfriend, appeared to argue. A few minutes later, Elizabeth left the car crying. Valencia never saw or heard from Munoz again. He and his mother would report Munoz missing 2 days later when police interviewed him. Valencia identified Marino in a photographic lineup. So you can imagine what that argument's about. And if I had to guess, that's Munoz arguing with Elizabeth, saying, I have to do this. I have to go back. I have to return. I can't avoid this. If I don't go back tonight, I'm just going to have to deal with this tomorrow. Let me just go get this over with. They're going to jump me out, and then I'm free. I got a daughter. I got a family. I can get out. And she, Elizabeth, is going, no, dummy. They're going to kill you if you go back. Please don't go back. I love you. Please don't go back. And Munoz made a decision as a man. Said, I got to do this as a man. I'm going to make a decision, and I'm going to live with the consequences. On the morning of April 4th, Griselda Silas was walking down an alley by West 40th Place in L.A. As she passed a rolling gate that was open about 10 inches and looked into the courtyard of the residential property, Silas could see a bald man struggling to lift a large and apparently heavy black bag into the back of a red car with a horse emblem. Mustang. Silas believed she could see the silhouette of legs. The contents of the bag appeared to her to be a body. Silas also saw a woman standing about 25 feet from the man. The man was, quote, laughing, and he seemed to be having fun. That evening, Marino telephoned Carla Ramirez, who was his girlfriend. She and Marino also had a daughter together. Ramirez knew Marino was an SDK gang member known as Menace. Marino told her he wanted some money. He said he had lent her and told her he had some, quote, roadkill. When Marino arrived at Ramirez's home in Lancaster, California, he told Ramirez he had a gift or a surprise. Kind of giggling, quote, Marino opened the trunk of the red car she had never seen before and showed her a body wrapped in a plastic and yellow tape from thighs to feet. The body was not moving, and Ramirez was scared. Marino then showed Ramirez several credit cards, including a blue Bank of America card with a photograph of a Hispanic male with a mustache on it. Marino grabbed Ramirez by the arm and told her he was taking her shopping. At that point, Ramirez's mother came outside. Marino let go of Ramirez's arm, and she ran inside her house and called the sheriffs. Ramirez could see Marino drinking in the car, and when the sheriffs arrived and tried to approach him, he drove off. That evening, deputies responded to a report of a vehicle fire in Lancaster. The car was the red 1998 Mustang registered to Munoz. After the fire was extinguished, the car was towed to a secured lot. Upon opening the car's trunk, an arson investigator found a burned male body inside. The body was later identified as Munoz. The next day, April 5th, Marino again telephoned Ramirez, and he was angry. He said Ramirez was, quote, a B-word, and she had betrayed him. He said he was going to kill her and her family. After seeing the body in the trunk, she was scared and remained afraid until Marino was in custody. Marino also called his mother Miriam that day, telling her he was going to be moving. When she asked if he had done something bad, he started laughing and told her, quote, he killed somebody and burned the car. She said, quote, you say like that? I don't know you. You don't come from me. Marino started laughing again. When she tried to ask more questions, he said he was not going to tell her anything else and hung up. That same day, Abraham Garcia was at the house Marino shared with his brother Edwin, who was also known as Chico. Garcia was a close family friend for 17 years. Garcia was like, quote, a brother to Marino and Edwin, and he had known Marino since he was a little kid. Marino's mother, Miriam, owned the property located at 1343 West 40th Place in Los Angeles. There was one house on the north side of 40th Place and the second house separated from the front house by a patio or courtyard. Marino and his brother lived in the back house. A fence surrounded the entire property, but there was a rolling gate on the west side between the courtyard area and the alley. When Garcia arrived, only Edwin was there, but Garcia overheard a telephone conversation between Edwin and Marino on the speakerphone. Edwin told Marino he was, quote, acting weird and asked what he had done. Marino said he had, quote, killed someone. I slit his throat. Marino was acting funny and said he had painted the room. Garcia and Edwin started putting two and two together. So he's dropping hints. He's telling him what he's doing without telling him. He's bragging. Putting two and two together, when they looked into the details and could see the blood that Marino tried to cover, Garcia urged the police to go to Marino's house because he believed that's where it took place. Garcia told police Marino, quote, was a rival. Marino had said, quote, it was a rival gang member and he drove him in the car and, quote, burned the car with the body in it. According to Garcia, Marino even described, quote, what he's going to be charged with. He said it would, quote, be kidnapping, arson, and murder. Garcia described the conversation in a recorded police interview in which he told police he did not want to be involved, but wanted to do the right thing. At trial, however, he claimed he had not actually heard the conversation, was only repeating what Edwin had told him. That's typical. You know, defense attorneys get to you, you start rethinking things, you start second-guessing things, and they get them to flip a little bit, cause maybe a little bit of potential doubt. Not that honestly, with the amount of facts and details and evidence in this case, I don't think whether he testified or not really made a difference. When Garcia went inside the house, he saw that one of the back bedrooms, previously white, had been partially, barely half of the room painted green. Also, the room was empty and the bed was missing. Garcia also saw red spots that appeared to be dried blood drops on a TV stand. On April 7th, L.A. County Police Detectives Brian Kalisha served a search warrant on the house Marino and Edwin shared. During the search, Detective Kalisha recovered a spent shell casing at the doorway between the courtyard and west bedroom of the house in the back. When he entered the bedroom, he noticed fresh green paint haphazardly applied to a wall. The wall had not been completely covered, and there was green paint on the carpet. The green paint had not completely covered some red droplets on the wall. The red droplets on the wall and other red droplets found near the TV stand, a shirt, and a towel appeared to be consistent with blood, and droplets throughout the room tested positive for blood. He was lazy. He was dumb, and he was lazy. And maybe I shouldn't say dumb. That's kind of rude of me to say that. He just didn't act very smart when trying to cover this crime up. And to be honest, I just don't think he cared. I just really don't think he cared. Just to do all that and to talk the way he did and brag the way he did. Showed his girlfriend. She ran away scared, calling his friends, dropping hints that are making it obvious as to what he did. I think he was, he knew what was coming. DNA testing then matched the blood to Munoz. 3 days later, on April 10th, Marino was detained for jaywalking. That's crazy, jaywalking. A warrant check indicated he was wanted for murder, and he was arrested. Although the arresting officer had only stated that Marino had a warrant and purposely had not otherwise stated the reason for the arrest, Marino spontaneously stated, quote, "Murders, no big deal." The following day from jail, Marino called his sister Jacqueline, and their conversation was recorded. Marino admitted he had killed someone and had put the body in the trunk of the car. He also admitted he had threatened Ramirez, telling her he was going to kill her and her parents. Regarding Munoz, Marino told his sister that the person he killed was an MS gang member who had been trying to, quote, gun him, not a friend. Marino said they had a, quote, beef with MS and people from Menace had been looking for him. He said he and his homies had been drinking and, quote, caught that fool slipping, meaning he had his guard down. Marino said they brought him back to Marino's pad where they beat the man and, quote, did it. He seemingly agreed when Jacqueline said someone else had fired the fatal shot, but later said, quote, "It's either me or him, so I took him out." When she asked Marino how he could drive off and dispose of the body, Marino said, "Honestly, I didn't even give an F. He thought, well, this mother effer's dead. F him. He's a mierda." Just a rude, it's a derogatory term, meaning, quote, piece of S. Marino told Jacqueline, "When I go and I do a mission, I get away with it. I took 3 of these effing fools out already. Unlike those times," Marino said, "this one, it was messy. I didn't even do it smart." He also said he walked by undercover officers with his gun before his arrest and told his sister he would have just, quote, shot if they had tried to stop him. That's absolutely crazy. That's one of the craziest paragraphs I've ever read on this channel. A grand jury would go on to indict Marino on charges, and these are all under the penal codes. 187, all further undestined statutory references to the penal code. Count 1, making a criminal threat and robbery. Count 3, and robbery's 211. Count 3, one count of the indictment alleges a special circumstance that Marino had committed the murder to the furtherance of the activity of his criminal street gang. Like we talk about, guys. Those key words in furtherance of a criminal street gang. He's Sureno, MS-13 member. Yeah. Los Angeles police officer Guillermo Espinoza testified as a gang expert. He said MS-13 was a large criminal street gang with more than 2,000 active members, and the gang had many subsets or cliques, including SDK. Officer Espinoza testified SDK began as a tagging crew, primarily engaged in graffiti and vandalism, but they were recruited or adopted in MS-13 to expand its reach after a gang injunction was issued against MS-13 in 2007. Officer Espinoza said it was his opinion SDK was a subset of MS-13 based on interviews he had conducted with his MS-SDK gang members, information and arrest reports from a Santa Monica shooting, and his own observation of graffiti linking the two gangs. For example, he had seen graffiti of MS-13 followed by the words, "Sir, do kill," and an arrow pointing toward down the street. According, he would just go on to talk about the primary activities of MS-13, murder, robbery, kidnapping, extortion, shooting, and vandalism. All right? Shown certified copies of minute orders indicating Albert and William Ramirez have been jointly convicted of assault with a deadly weapon. He just goes on to talk about all these things. In 2009, Marino said he was both SDK and MS-13. Marino had several gang tattoos on his body, including the number 735, the keypad numbers corresponding to the letters SDK. Tattooed on the left side of his face, he also had a teardrop tattooed on his right eye, indicating he had either killed or attempted to kill a rival gang member. He had another SDK tattoo that appeared to be an attempt to cover an MS tattoo. So, sounds like somebody in conflict. Sounds like a Sureno gang member who at first, okay, he's cool, becomes part of this MS gang, doesn't mind it, and then maybe starts pulling back and going, F that, we're going to do our own thing. We're Surenos. It is what it is. Just, you don't really know all the way. According to Officer Espinoza's testimony, the only way a person could typically leave MS was by getting killed or by suffering a beatdown. Given a number of hypotheticals with facts tracking the prosecution's theory of the case, Officer Espinoza testified that a homicide in such circumstance was, quote, carried out in furtherance of the gang. Officer Espinoza said it was a sign of disrespect when the victim said he was no longer part of the gang, warranting either a beatdown or death. The homicide benefited the gang by instilling fear and respect while reducing the number of others who would attempt to leave the gang in the future. Further, anyone who participated in the killing would increase their own status within the gang as a result of the homicide. And the alternative, Officer Espinosa said, if the victim was a rival gang member, the homicide would also be in furtherance of the gang. So basically saying what Marino's telling his sister Jacqueline, no, this wasn't a rival. This was somebody who was once an SDK / MS-13 gang member who basically grew up a little bit, had a daughter, had a family, and goes, I don't want to do this anymore. Tried to turn around, but he's still in the same neighborhood, right? He's still going to the same parties as these gang members who are going to see him and go, what's up, man? You know, people can tell, not just gang members, anybody. You can tell if you have a friend or someone that you once considered a friend and they're acting different towards you or acting like they're maybe better than you or they don't want to be around you. I mean, it's just obvious. It's just human nature, right? We pick up on that. Marino actually would get up and testify in his own defense. He admitted he killed Munoz, put Munoz's body in the trunk of Munoz's own red Mustang and then set the car on fire. But Marino claimed he initially attacked Munoz to prevent him from sexually assaulting Nadia Garcia, who was heavily intoxicated at the time, and said he had shot Munoz during the fight. That allowed in an effort to stop, not kill Munoz. It's like, oh my God, that's your defense. So basically he was trying to save this girl is what Marino's defense was, and that's just not true. Munoz was with his girlfriend and his friend at the time, or his brother. It's kind of conflicting reports with Valencia. I read a couple things that it was his friend. There was a part where it was his brother, but regardless, he wasn't doing anything with this girl that had too much to drink. Marino acknowledged he was an SDK member, but said he had socialized with MS members without ever joining that gang. He claimed SDK and MS had become rivals, and some MS members had tried to kill him prior to the incident involving Munoz. He did not recall telling police he was a member of MS. Marino said he knew Munoz well, as the two had lived in the same neighborhood, and Marino had brought Munoz into SDK. But Munoz had not been around SDK for several years and had not put in any work. According to Marino, it was not acceptable for a gang member to, quote, disappear from his fellow gang members. When he saw Munoz at the party on April 3rd, 2009, Marino told Munoz he needed to be, quote, checked or beaten up for 19 seconds, 1 second for each letter of the alphabet through the letter S, as discipline. According to Marino, Munoz understood the punishment and never said he wanted out of the gang, so the conversation was friendly. He claimed he never said anything about getting a bullet to the head or simulated the handgun gesture with his hand. He said he and Munoz made arrangements to meet later. Yeah, and then that's when he said he prevents the attack on the girl, and anyway, just testifies, doesn't work. And anyway, he ends up getting convicted, comes found guilty, life, no parole, does, 12, 13 years, Kern Valley State Prison, and finds himself on the opposite end, found himself whatever, the details haven't come out of why he was killed, but something happened where they felt they needed to take his life. Like I've talked about in these other videos, when more information comes out, I will do a follow-up. Even if it's a different topic in a video, I will just take a quick 30-second, 1-minute break, and I'll break it down to give you guys an idea of what's going on. But there you guys have it. Absolutely crazy, crazy story. Marino's background is almost crazier than the murder that took place. But like we've talked about these last few videos, CDCR, I'm really interested in some of the changes they said they're going to be making right now. They got a lot of these places on lots of restrictions. We're going to see what happens in the future. And until next time, you already know what it is. Peace.